Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We'll just wait a few more minutes and then we'll begin the presentation soon. Should we start, Jocelyn? Okay, let's. Okay, so welcome everyone to VanQ webinar. I'm Shobit and I work at Optimus and we sponsor VanQ. This might be the first time for some of you that you are attending a VanQ webinar. So we organize this meetup every month and we get speakers who present on different topics from different areas of technology. So for today, I'll quickly touch up on some housekeeping stuff as well as a little bit about Optimus in terms of what we do and what are we all about. So Optimus is a tech solutions company and we help companies digitally transform. We help them with their cloud migration, um, app development, app maintenance, and things like that. We are a certified, Microsoft certified gold partner with 7 gold competencies. And we have 2 centers of operation. One is in Noida, India, and one in Vancouver, of course, with Vancouver being the headquarters. Um, we primarily use Microsoft Azure for all cloud migrations and integrations. Uh, Now, moving on to some housekeeping rules. So for this webinar, I would request all of you to please keep your mic muted. And if you have any quick questions, you can jump in during the webinar and just raise your hand. There's like a little hand icon you can see, and then we'll unmute you so you can ask your question. Uh, if you want, you can turn on your video so that way it feels a little more interactive. And yeah, it's pretty simple, straightforward guidelines. Now, in terms of the next VanQ, we have our next VanQ on September 24th, and we'll have Alex who will be presenting on running Selenium automated tests in Azure DevOps. And we have an exciting webinar series where we are getting the CEO of Cymax Group, Rizwan, as our speaker, who will be talking about digital transformation journey with Azure and how the Cymax Group went through that journey and his experience in digital transformation. So that is happening on September 9th. You can check out more details on that on our website. You can just go under events under our website and find more information there. If anyone is interested in registering, you can also message us on Meetup and we'll get back to you. For today's presentation, we have Neha, who is also from Cymax Group, and she'll be presenting on Retrospectives 101. And without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Neha now.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to start sharing my screen and let me know when you see it. Yep. Good. Okay. Awesome. Hello, everyone. I think like people who are regular to the VanQ group have interacted with me before this webinar as well, before this meetup as well. So my name is Neha and I work as a senior manager in Cymax Group. I will have a little bit of myself, as we go through the presentation, just like, the first slide, a little bit about myself, and really happy to be here. Thank you, VanQ meetup team, for having me again. Thank you. All right. So getting started. So we'll just go through, a little bit about myself, just get into the basics of the retrospective meetings, just trying to understand, where the term is coming from, what's the purpose, and why would we even do such meetings, and how to conduct a retrospective meeting, some fun ideas that we can implement. And again, like that being said, you will realize, like once we do discuss these ideas, you will realize that these are just not, restricted to the retrospective meetings. These can be used as icebreakers for a lot of other meetings. So we'll go into that a little bit more. We'll also bust some myths. Like there are a lot of pet peeves. There are a lot of, I would say, misconceptions about what this meeting is or supposed to be. So we'll talk a little bit about the most common ones. And of course, we'll wrap it up and we'll have time for question and answers towards the end. And of course, you guys can share your experience as well. And again, this being an interactive session, we would like to I would say learn more about how the retrospectives work in your organization and probably your take on it as well. All right. Right. So as introduced, I work at Cymax Group and I am the senior manager for business process improvement. That being said, don't worry. I still manage the software testing team. So, I still oversee, I have for the last 5 years. I do manage the software testing team. We are a distributed team of about 7 QAs, some here in Vancouver, some based in India. And we kind of work like a well-oiled machine with the rest of the organization. All right, a little bit about Cymax Group. Cymax Group is primarily an e-commerce-based technology company. Our office is in Burnaby, and most of our clients are in the United States. It's our mission to make superior e-commerce accessible to businesses, big and small. So based on over, I would say, 2 decades of being in the business, we have learned a lot, and we are offering our expertise, to the rest of the people trying to get in, whether people and businesses trying to get into e-commerce, whether big or small. We have a family of brands, I can say, which probably you may have heard a little bit about. We have a product called Freight Club. That is basically our logistics solution that we are offering to big and small businesses to tap into. We have a product called ChannelGate. So ChannelGate is almost like this one-stop solution for people or organizations looking to get into selling faster. Selling at multiple marketplaces, one-click selling, one-click listing of catalog, and things like that. And of course, we do also have our parent website, which is like the oldest legacy website we have, which is cymax.com, and also homesquare.com. So these are all our brands and our parent company. It's all under the umbrella of Cymax Group. Since my last presentation, I have also accepted to be a board of director at a nonprofit called Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology. It was established in 1981, and it's based in Vancouver with the purpose of advancing women and girls in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics. That's something I think that I'm really passionate about. Definitely, I want to contribute more. So it was a very good, I would say, opportunity for me to make a difference in the community. last not the least, totally unrelated to the whole tech scene. I'm also a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I own my own practice called the Orion Immigration Services. We do have a website here. So again, my idea is to facilitate migration of tech talent in Vancouver local market, and of course in Canada. And that's kind of the whole background. All right, enough about me. Let's get back to the topic that we've all gathered here to discuss, which is retrospective. So just going by dictionary definition, just like the literal meaning of retrospective, the word retrospective means looking back or dealing with past events and situations. So it's basically where you would think of things that happened or events that happened in the past, and you analyze them a bit more. So the purpose of having such a retrospect moment or a meeting is like when you're having having this moment or sharing this moment with more than one person. Like if you're just reflecting by yourself, it probably would be a moment. But if you are including and collaborating with other team members or other people, then it would count as a meeting. And the purpose is to improve or tweak the existing process based on the past. So it could be past wins, so we know exactly what works, and past failures, so we know exactly that absolutely doesn't work. Also about the lessons learned. These are basically opportunities for us to identify, okay, last time we tried doing this, this is what we ran into, this is what we needed support for. So going forward, we need to get this sorted out. And also to identify known risks. Quite often we get pulled into projects that seem very repetitive in nature, which means that the risk that's associated to them may or may not be known in advance. So it's always good to leverage what we know historically to make sure our future deliverable is low risk and is a better version. All right. For the remainder of the presentation, we would talk about retrospective meetings with respect to the Agile software development methodology. The reason being, like, the retrospective, again, it's a very generic word. The term retrospect has been used for ages in different contexts. So, a lot of organizations would do retrospect, let's say, if an incident happened. They would kind of do a postmortem and see, what's going on, what went wrong, things like that. Or they may do it after milestone release. But for companies that do operate, in 2-week or 3-week shipping models or timelines, the retrospective meetings have greater value, because then any unresolved issue can actually mitigate into something bigger. And also it ties down to the principles already listed in the Agile Manifesto, which is one of the principles there is at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes in and adjusts its behavior accordingly. And this basically talks about continuous improvement. So, you are looking at a process or a problem area to improve and to continuously keep driving that improvement. All right. This principle is incorporated in Agile team in the form of retrospective meetings, and that's what we're going to focus for the remainder of the presentation. All right. All right. So talking about retrospective meetings, we can conduct the retrospective meetings in a structured way where it's very formal. We do have a proper invite. We have a very structured way of conducting it, or it can be a bit informal. Again, it depends on the context. It depends on the setting. It depends on how you want to engage the team as a facilitator. So it depends on a lot of things. But we're going to look into some common steps that you would take. All right. So as I briefly mentioned before, retrospective meetings can be held at various stages during the project. They can be held towards the end of a sprint, or they can be to review a specific problematic scenario, like a one-off thing, or it may be at a milestone to reflect on the status thus far. So it can be, placed at different places during the delivery cycle. Any retrospective meeting will involve the following steps. We start with set stage. So what we mean by that is it involves setting up of the meeting by the facilitator. Again, the facilitator may be, Scrum Master, in one organization, but it may be the project manager or the product manager in another one. That's why I'm not using any specific term. Like I'm not saying Scrum Master should do it. It really, like from what I've seen, it really varies across teams, across organizations. So I'm just going to say facilitator, whoever that may be in the context of your organization, your team. And then it also involves, setting the meeting invitation, trying to identify what kind of meeting are you going to have, and what kind of meeting, the format. We're going to talk about some fun formats. So, there's a lot to choose from. So it'll be good to think about that in advance, like while you're setting up the Connect. The next step would be to gather the data. By that, what I mean is that once the meeting starts, somebody, and that somebody is most often the facilitator, unless somebody self-nominates themselves, that person is supposed to gather all the ideas, opinions, concerns, any input from the team, and then gather it in a way where we can look into it and identify some sort of patterns or problem areas. So that's the gather data step. Generate insights. Again, the idea of everybody getting together for a retrospective is to identify the problem areas or identify trends, underlying trends, and resolve them if they seem problematic. So one example for that is, if a team member is unhappy about long daily stand-ups, we have to figure out what's causing it. It can be anything from, that person maybe is just not interested to talk to other people in the morning, or maybe seems like it starts as a stand-up and then people talk about the weather and everything under the sun, and this person just loses focus. Or it's just realistically we haven't set the meeting time accurately. Like it is based on, let's say if you have 15 team members all going through, like, trying to explain what they did today, what are they going to do, in the pipeline, what they did yesterday. Imagine going round table 15 people. Like if you set a 15-minute time limit, I think we are setting up team for failure. So these are the things that need to be kind of understood and then resolved accordingly. Right. Moving on. The next step would be to create actions. And this happens once all the ideas are kind of categorized in the right bucket. And when I say right bucket, we will see what that means. And then we prioritize them. If we have too much, of, let's say, things that we need to improve on, of course, we would need to prioritize it to make sure that we get to the most critical ones first. And then we assign accountable people or person to resolve the issue. So it can be as simple as like, hey, I think we need like team outing, because all last 4 weeks it's been like all work and no fun. We're like, okay, that can be an action point. So the facilitator can note down the action point, organize a team building, and then assign it to whoever's supposed to be organizing events or helping and facilitating that. But that's like a simple example. And we've seen that action point come up very often. They're like, okay, you know what? We have just been focusing on work, and it's getting really stressful. We need a break. We need a team outing. So, it's not unusual to have non-technical action points coming out of the retrospect meeting. And then, of course, at the end, to wrap up everything, thank the team for their time and make sure the meeting discussion and action points are documented and circulated for easy reference. Again, like it's always good to have that. Again, we are not trying to over document and, write everything down, but we are trying to make sure that whatever the team mentioned, it's noted. Somebody's on it to resolve it, and that kind of what that would give more confidence to the participants next time around to participate more. And also it builds up that historical kind of a lesson learned repository for future deliveries, future teams. Like, for example, if okay, every time we onboard a new payment processor, we always run into this issue. If somebody has that documented, knows about the place where they can find all these lessons learned, it's going to be so much easier for the subsequent release. All right, now the fun part. All right. I just hope I was not going too fast, but yeah, we have lots to go through. Agile retrospective meeting formats, the fun part. Okay, So this is the most common one that I've seen. Very literally, it just means, we list down what went well, what should have been done better. And it's just it's very simple to either build that template or use sticky notes, or nowadays I think most of the platforms do have inbuilt templates. So like we use Jira at work, and Jira has a template for retrospective meetings. So we just, choose that template and we just keep going on that. So we don't really have to reinvent the wheel every time. And the idea is pretty simple. The team members meet and discuss what the team did well, what the team needs to improve, lessons learned, and any action points that come out of those improvement areas. Ideally, if there is something that needs improvement, I would expect the team to have some sort of an action point to fix it. These actions, as we discussed earlier, they are assigned to a single person, accountable person, or to a team, to multiple people, depending on what it is. And this discussion is documented and circulated. It can be saved on a shared drive, internet, knowledge base, wherever your historical documents are stored in the organization, you can just store it there. This is just an example, and it's a very common example. If we look at what should have been done better, I have seen so many instances where point number 2 comes in. We see an unassigned ticket, and we're like, okay, while I'm waiting on this stuff, let me just get started on that. And then you realize, oh, actually, somebody seems to be already working on it. There seems to be a branch associated with this and things like that. And then like, okay, that was just wasted 5 hours of my time or things like that. So again, it can be anything that could be as small as, hey, make sure everybody puts comments, or as big as, hey, I don't think the team's communicating really well. We need to work on our communication. So it can be anything. In terms of the issues or the concerns, or what the team needs to focus and improve on. Right. So the next one is pretty similar to the previous one. And basically it categorizes the concerns or the issues or the opinions into start doing, stop doing, and keep doing. Again, like you can see that I have a screenshot of a Jira template and from whiteboard, so with sticky notes. So it can be done either way. Like it was easier when everybody was physically in the same location, but definitely some ways in which this can be conducted. Very similar. This method is very popular and effective, especially for newer teams, because it's very easy to follow. It's like, okay, what should we start doing? What should we stop doing? And what should we continue to do? So it's very easy. You don't really need to explain or onboard the team or train the team on this format. Simple things like you can also set the limits. So for example, if you're like, okay, everybody on a minimum needs to submit one item for each bucket or each category, and then you can top it off if you want. We rarely come to the top limit, but we always encourage people to, or the team members or the participants, to express. I haven't really seen any meeting, at least the meetings that I've participated, where we had an upper limit. But if there are more people, just in the interest of time, you can do that too. And once the items are all, I would say, listed in the right bucket, then if the list is too long, you can prioritize that and then assign actions accordingly. Yeah, 5 why. When I was doing the research for this, this whole content is part of one of my blog articles. And when I was doing research for that, I was really, really surprised to see that 5 why, which is a standard, I would say, root cause analysis, not methodology, not a framework, but it is a technique that we use for root cause analysis. And I was surprised to see that there were some retrospectives that were being conducted in this format as well. And it's very simple. You just ask why 5 times. And usually for me, I've realized that by the time we come to second or third why, we know the underlying root cause problem. So, it may start, I know the screenshot's not too clear, but, what it starts is as, it usually starts with a defined problem where it says, okay, the problem this time was the team missed the deadline for running executive reports. And you ask the question why, or the facilitator asks the question why. And then the response is, oh, because no one was on site to run the reports. And then the next is why. So then the response is people the person who runs it was on vacation and nobody was there to do the job. And then why? Because there was no backup. And there was why? Because nobody identified that this person even runs the jobs, right? So it's kind of getting to the actual root cause. So it's not like you put a band-aid on what you think the problem is. Oh, you got a scratch, let's just put a band-aid. It's about actually finding out what's wrong and trying to remedy that. So it's more deeper, I would say, but I was surprised to see this being used and categorized as an agile retrospective meeting format. But this is my favorite. Like my son knows 5Y2 because he just drives me crazy. Like, oh, I have to go sleep. If I tell him, okay, it's time for you to sleep, he'll be like, why? Because you're gonna go school. Because you have to go to school. He's like, why? Why do I have to sleep? And it just goes on. He goes more than 5 Ys, I'm pretty sure, but still. This is a formal, professional meeting format as well. All right. Moving on. Mad, sad, and glad. A little informal. It basically categorizes the opinions or the concerns in glad, sad, or mad bucket. But mad tends to focus on any obstructions, any barriers which really drove this person mad or frustrated this person. In the sad bucket, we include things that are more like internal issues, like, oh, I'm really sad. Nobody, not nobody helped me, but nobody was there to collaborate with me, let's say. Or glad. And in the glad bucket, we have we focus on things that the team members are really happy about. So I'm really happy, like high five, zero incident after the release or something. So it can be anything. And again, it's just a way of categorizing these opinions that can help in getting more clarity and also making sure that we spend time in prioritizing things that would help the team. Whether it's from the sad bucket, whether it's from the mad bucket, whatever it is, just prioritize them. Draw me a picture. This one's really, really cool. A little bit informal as well. And this is very good for icebreakers. And I know a lot of teams do struggle with, participation where the team members would not express themselves too much. So this is a nonverbal retrospective technique. And pretty much all it takes is like, here's a sticky note, here's your pen, draw what you want to say. And this is how it would probably look like. I would probably look like this crying lady on the left top side, the one on the green sticky. But yeah, this is, and somebody could be like, oh, actually, in the sprint, I actually felt like a juggler because I was juggling too many things. And you don't really need to like put too many words. You can express yourself visually. And it's surprising how many people, like when you ask them to express themselves by drawing, it's a real icebreaker because then either they'll draw something really, really awesome and you'll figure out, oh my God, this guy's an artist. Or you would be like, okay, this drawing sucks and it's really funny, although you were very frustrated, but you know what? It was fun. So, this is really, really good icebreaker also, can be used in conjunction with other techniques that we just saw. It's really great. And also, when I had posted this blog, a lot of readers provided insights into how things worked in their team. So this one person talked about, an icebreaker activity where just when everybody collected for the retrospective, they were given a piece of paper and they were asked to write one good thing about the person sitting on the right. So they, wrote one positive or one of the strength points or like whatever, anything positive about the person sitting next to them in the meeting. And then they would just like fold it and give it to that person and say, okay, and it was really good to know that, other team members appreciate you and see you in a positive light. So I think that also brings out a lot of team building. Again, an icebreaker, I would say. But yeah, it was interesting. I've never done this activity in my meetings, but definitely something that people can follow. Very easy to follow too. All right, circle celebration. This is very good in summer months. Like if you want to go outside and basically make it like a little bit include a little bit of physical activity as well. It's almost like everybody getting together, forming a circle and just passing around object, whether if it's a ball, throwing it around, or if it's a pass in the parcel kind of a thing. Like it can work too. But the idea is that whoever gets that item, needs to provide their input about what they enjoyed during the project or during the sprint, what they appreciated, and what they and how will they improve based on what they've learned. And the object just keeps going. It just gets passed till everybody's had an opportunity to speak. Again, gets a little bit of blood going if you do the physical activity. It can be substituted with a soccer ball. I don't know, but it can work definitely. A big question is considering the situation that we all are in the last few months. We do not have the luxury, most of us do not have the luxury to be in the same physical space as our co-workers, and online virtual connections have taken over. Again, that being said, really the 101 rules or the basic ground rules for conducting the retrospective meetings or the formats that could be used, they still apply. There's no change on that front. There has to be an improvement opportunity no matter how you identify it. Depends on the format, but there needs to be resulting action items and they need to be taken seriously. And that's pretty much the gist of it. And regardless of whether we are doing this in person or if we are doing it online, doesn't really change much. Definitely, we can leverage all the online platforms, tools. You may even need to tweak your meeting format. So, for example, like I've seen some retrospective meetings where they build, if the entire team is a Lego fan, they would, get the Lego pieces in, try to build something, get, the team building going. And right now we can't really do it if everybody's not in the same space, but you can definitely prep for it if that is a thing you want to do. Maybe in advance mail out those Lego kits to the teammates, right, so that they can all open it up and do the same activity that is expected had they been connected in person. And also just being prepared for the meeting in the sense that if it's now a virtual meeting, you're not going to be passing pen around or sticky notes around. Make sure you make it part of the initial invitation about what they need to get in order to be prepared. They need a pen, marker, I don't know, a bottle that spins, a wine, beer, I don't know, like whatever it may be. It can be all included. It's just about being ready, but the basic ground rules are still the same. The platform may be different, the format may be tweaked, but it's all the same still. All right. Any questions thus far? No, we good?
I think there is one question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to see the questions, or do you want me to read it out?
Let me just, okay. All right, so yeah, I can read the questions. I have a question. My mic is not working, so just putting in chat here. If you are working on different projects, how can you make sure that retrospective meetings are being meaningful? If we go too deep into each retrospective meeting, then the learning may not be as applicable for the upcoming project. So how can we ensure the conclusions help the future projects? Very good question, Trey. Most often, we do see people kind of, moving around projects or moving around teams. I would say that retrospective meeting looks into more things than just lessons learned, right? If there's an underlying, I would say, organization level issue or a team issue or an attitude issue, it may still remain regardless of the project that you are in. So, if you have like a salty person in the team that doesn't leave any opportunity to, take it out on others, no matter which project that person is assigned, and no matter if, you are working with that person or somebody else's, this needs to be dealt with. So again, it really depends a lot on the context, but you're right, like it may not apply, I would say, literally and like one-on-one, like it's not going to be like exactly like the same thing we copy paste and we apply the learnings to next one and we are set up for success. Everything, like even if it's similar project, I would say the learnings are going to be different, the experience is going to be different. So I think it's just, I think I wouldn't say finding the balance, but I think it's going to be what works within the organization for the team, for the project, is what I would say. Again, I would not limit it to the project. I would keep it at the team level, because if it is the same core team that's going to be handling the rest of the 10, 15, 100 projects coming their way, that team needs to be in sync, and any underlying issues, whether it's technical issues or attitude issues or communication issues, they need to be fixed regardless. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it. Thank you for the question. That's a really good one. All right. So moving on. Common myths. Yeah. I really like to bust common myths. You're welcome, Trey. It is sometimes like when we it's really embarrassing, but the first time I did a retrospective, I did it with myself. And I had no idea you're supposed to ask other people too. Like I just thought, okay, it's going to be me thinking about how this thing went and then, providing my input. And that's going to be the end of retrospective. And I was so wrong till I started doing my research, and started learning about it. But then again, like a lot of people are in the same situation. So just like some common misconceptions that I've seen out there based on my communication. And then we can address those. Yeah, retrospective meetings are boring, maybe super boring. There are a lot of people who have this feedback, and I would not blame you for it. There are some meetings, especially when the meetings keep happening in the same format and it's the same thing, and then you're like, oh, we talked about it 2 months ago, nothing's being done. It tends to fizzle out, like it's not gonna last. So for us, I think as facilitators, it's so not for us, like for the team or the person who's facilitating, it's really important for them to make sure that the retrospective meetings are fun. Switch up the meeting formats, bring food. Bringing food always gets people in the door. It's worked. If it's evening meeting, a little bit of beer and wine can work too, because I remember we had this one of the meeting sessions and we put a theme there. It was like wine and cheese platter. So it was wine and cheese theme. Okay. So it was packed. Like we didn't have everybody in the meeting turned up, and it was fun. Like it was a 5 p.m. kind of a meeting, but it got the people in at least to talk about what we needed to talk about. Of course, add more visual aids and fun activities. Don't limit to, okay, let's get down to business. Let's see what we did well, what we didn't do well. Maybe have an icebreaker. We talked about a few icebreaker activities. Team building. Something to break the ice, get the people engaged, and then you can jump to business if required, as required. And then again, like this is kind of chicken and egg scenario, but you can do a retrospective of your own retrospective and figure out what sucked in it and why people stop coming to it and why people think it's boring. It's going to be really insightful, I think, for the facilitator to understand what's not working in this, to address the concerns, and then, restore the faith in this kind of a meeting and the significance of this meeting. I found this image, which was about a retro dart. I haven't done it myself, but I think it'll be really interesting if this document or this page was like somewhere on the whiteboard and people, like, I don't know, or even like an actual dartboard where people can throw darts and express what they want to. I am pretty sure that's going to keep people awake as well. But yeah, another good idea. Okay, another big one. Retrospective meeting is my opportunity to point out the weakness in everyone. Not me, I'm not wrong, but everybody else messed up, and I'm going to tell you exactly how they did it. No, that's kind of not the idea. A retrospective meeting is not a finger pointing or a venting out session. It is not scheduled to pinpoint or call out team members for their weaknesses or mistakes. This meeting should be set up in a neutral environment, and the aim is to improve and grow as a team. So, I help you, you help me, and we grow together as a team. And that is the idea. So we strictly ask, like when we are setting the ground rules for the meeting, although for luckily in our organization, we are a very diverse and very respectful bunch of folks. We have our we haven't listed any rules, but respect is one of them, and being mindful is another one of them. This is something that we've inculcated as a culture itself, so we don't have to list down the rules for any meetings per se, but definitely if you have to list it down because you think it's going to get nasty because it's been an awful release or an awful stressful time for the team, you can list it down that avoid making any please don't make any direct comments about a single person. You can say, it would be great if the development team could have blah, 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 or the testing team could have blah, blah, blah. But it's not like, oh, I really wish Susan had done this. Like, let's not kind of go there. Sorry to use Susan if we have any Susan, like I just used it used it as an example. Sorry about that. All right. And remember, the aim is to, again, become better and to improve. All right. Another one. Only meeting organizer talks in this meeting. So this meeting is not for the facilitator. It is for the team members. So in this case, I think if people are inherently shy or they're not comfortable in opening up and expressing themselves, the facilitator can try and I would say they need to make sure that people are comfortable, whether it's having a comfortable environment set up or not or not, I would say, inviting higher management in that, like whatever makes the team comfortable so that they can open up, they can express what they want without the fear of backlash, because that's really important. Last thing you want for a person to be really honest about the whole thing that happened, and then next thing you know, that person's being penalized for what he said, because like, oh, you said that, now let me show you, right? Like, so we don't really want this whole meeting to be interpreted in that way, and that's why it's really important for the facilitator. And also, I think it's throughout the organization. I mean, it should be part of the culture that if somebody is speaking up or expressing something, it needs to be respected, and there should not be any backlash. That being said, the way and the tone in which the communication, the person expresses themselves is also really important. So I think this a note for the person expressing themselves to be respectful about whatever they are trying to convey. Yeah, senior management or key stakeholders are not to be invited. Again, not true. Sometimes there are. I mean, it may not be a regular practice. I've seen most of the retrospective meetings happening between the core technical group, but there are times when we invite the business users. For example, if we are developing a tool or an application or a functionality for our operations team or a customer service team, and it was a release that only had customer service features, we would invite them. And, we'll be like, okay, we're just going to have a retrospective. Let us know what went well. And, whatever that format you guys want to follow, it is always beneficial, because there may be concerns that what if, the technical team actually has some concerns and needs those addressed, or there may be something from the EMT, SMT product owner, or the business user side. Maybe there is some opportunity to improve there. Maybe that we can improve the requirements. Maybe we can improve our understanding of the business users and their processes. So again, there can be a lot of improvement opportunities. So there's no restriction on who can and cannot be invited. Yeah. Meeting outcomes do not need to be documented. Not true. I know it's agile and everything, and the magic word there is less documentation, no documentation. No. It's still to make all this effort worthwhile, it needs to be documented. Like, we don't really need to, cross all the T's and dot all the I's, but we need to capture the core essence of it, because we want to make sure that we have a person who's actually going to see it through. So if there is a concern, we would like to assign that task to somebody within the team. Maybe it's like maybe outside the team, to make sure that this concern is resolved. If not like right in the near future, maybe in the next coming while, whatever it may be. So documentation does really help. I know, like, I would not advise to document, like over document, but definitely throwing some points and retaining what the team provided as input or as feedback is beneficial, definitely. All right, closing notes. We are almost towards the end. Did I go too fast, or we good in time? Okay. Right, so closing notes to kind of wrap everything up. Retrospectives are very useful for team building and team collaboration. That being said, as I mentioned briefly before as well, I often found retrospectives or the techniques mentioned in there to be applicable universally, even personally, right? Like there may be so many things that we go together, maybe in relationships or even personal growth, where we need to take a step back and kind of go in retrospect mode. So there, the concepts and everything, for me, they remain the same, but definitely professionally, it's really good for team building and team collaboration. Team members coming together to celebrate wins and propose improvements also create a more transparent and healthy team environment. Again, going back to team building and team collaboration, through continuous improvement and feedbacks, teams can become better as time goes by. The retrospective meeting should include both human issues like personality, again, soft skills, personality, attitude, lack of skills, or even lack of respect for that matter. If you don't really like how this person talks to you, whether it's, about a project or just talks to you in general, that needs to be addressed as well. And technical issues. So, if there was a scope creep, we promised something, then, we promised, we're going to put a swing in your backyard. And then next thing, we are working on a roller coaster. That was a scope creep. And then, inconsistent requirements, system stability, infrastructure, like whatever it may be. So do not limit it just to the technical parts, because there's more to a team than just the technical bit. Each of us are so different in terms of our thinkings and in terms of, how we process things and how we work. We need that human element addressed as well. All right. Team members should be made comfortable so that they can express their point of view without the fear of backlash. This is really, really important to have confidence for me as a participant. If I have that confidence that whatever I say is not going to be taken otherwise, and it's going to be taken for the betterment or the improvement of my team, I would be more confident speaking up. And then, of course, I would see, and when I do see those action points being closed or resolved, I would feel that my feedback actually mattered and it made a difference. It would make me feel more, I would say, engaged in this whole process. Next time somebody asks for my input, I know it's going to get heard. All right. The retrospective meetings can be conducted at the end of the milestone. Again, just recapping where all we've seen commonly these meetings being held. That could be at the end of the milestone, end of a sprint, post-mortem of an incident or issue, after any major event, maybe release. And make sure that your retrospective meetings are documented. And this is something we already talked a little bit about. And last but not the least, make your retrospective meetings fun, because it's very easy to doze off and zone out if it's not interesting. I may have been guilty of doing it, maybe not in the retrospective meetings, maybe in some other meetings that I may have attended, but it's very easy to zone out. So yeah. Question and answers, and also really, really interested to know if you guys want to kind of talk about how retrospective meetings work in your organization. Definitely all ears. I really want to learn more. We may only have a one-sided view. We may be missing maybe an awesome fun idea that you may be doing in your organization. So we want to know. Thank you, guys. All right, so Shrey has another question. How many times would you recommend holding a retrospective meeting during one product cycle? So again, as I mentioned, the retrospective meetings can be held at different times. The most common that we've seen in our tech team and what we follow as well is at the close of every sprint. So for us, the sprints are anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So some teams work in a more extreme mode where we are pushing stuff every week. So we are not doing retrospective for those teams because those are very high volume, like high pace, low risk things. But for any product management team, like we do have 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks of time boxed sprint time or timeline. So for us, we make sure without fail, we do it at the end of the sprint, because it's very important for us to kind of, spend this 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever it may take to actually just, take a breath. Just let's see how we did. And then let's move on to the next sprint, knowing, what we have, either what we need to improve or what we could have done better. So let's not wait for the action points to close off to actually make an improvement. let's learn whatever immediate wins we have or immediate actions we can close off. We can implement them right away. Like, we don't have to wait for anything. Last week, we, did not have good requirements, but hey, let's make sure going forward, starting next sprint, which starts tomorrow, this is exactly what we are doing. We are not going to get to a ticket if it doesn't have XYZ. The developers are not going to start doing it. So it gives a more I would say, it gives, I would say, it shortens the cycle to implement improvement if you do it frequently. Those are so after a sprint would be. After a sprint would be the most common one I've seen. I've also participated in numerous retrospective meetings after a production incident. That is the second most common one I've seen. That is also really, really important. Like, people call it, like, you may call it retrospective meeting, you may call it root cause analysis meeting, but the idea again is to get to the core of the problem. Let's see what we need to fix and let's move ahead. And that's kind of the second most common meeting I have seen. And that can happen, when the event happens. So if there is an outage, if there is a production incident, it was very critical, probably human error, probably third-party limitation, could be anything. That is another time when we see retrospective meetings happening, and that can be ad hoc, so we can't really predict the timeline for that. The other one that I've seen for teams that have bigger release cycle, so when I'm saying bigger release cycle, let's say they only go to production every 3 months. There are companies out there who do that, and that's because of the compliances and the regulations and all the things, red tape they have to go through to actually have that shippable package or shippable piece of code, and that's why they have a longer cycle. For them, they may break it down to smaller cycle, like, okay, let's say it's going to go in 3 phases. When phase 1 is done, we're going to have a retrospect. Phase 2, we're going to have a retrospect, and we're going to have a retrospect right before we release, and even after. Like, depends. Again, it really depends on how it is laid out. But the retrospective meetings are, I would say, quite general and can be applied for a lot of things outside software development also. Great question, Trey. Thank you for your questions. Anybody wants to provide probably a little bit of background about themselves? You're welcome. About themselves, or probably give us an idea of how retrospectives are run in your organization.
Hi, this is Hardik. If no one is starting, I will jump on.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I work in a company called Central Square Technologies, and we use a retrospective feature on Azure DevOps, and we have our retrospective after each release. So it's about the span of 2 to 3 months, and that feature has a really good way of adding ideas and grouping all these ideas, or what went right and what went wrong, and then for the certain duration, like for the certain period of time in the meeting, like we each participants can add ideas, and then the facilitator can group it together, and based on the groups, we usually discuss the action items. And at the end of the meeting, the facilitator would share all the action items and appointed person. But I really like the point of retrospective, but what happens, like in a busy routine, most of the items we are not able to follow up. So like I would say about half of the action items, like when it comes to next retrospective, we can see only half of the action items implemented on an average. So yeah, that's a really good point of retrospective.
Great.
That is
no,
much
thank you.
needed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience. I think this retrospective of retrospective, it's actually not a myth, because there's this one certain team that actually did this just quite recently. So exactly what you just mentioned was true for them as well. So, very fast-paced team, a lot of action points, not enough action happening, not enough resolution happening. So the team's like, okay, my action point for this, so the facilitator, he self-volunteered. He was like, my action point is that I'm going to go through all the previous retrospectives from whatever, like last 6 months or whatnot. I'm going to consolidate everything. I'm going to check where we are at. If not, I'm going to push and prioritize those action points. So at least we get some action done. But it's really funny. Yeah, it's retrospective of a retrospective, but it's essential at times.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so we have input from Shrey. It says also a fun thing that they seem to do is in retrospectives, they wrap it up with a shout out to all people who worked super hard in the cycle. That's really good. That's what we mean by celebrating the wins of the team. And I think it's really, really good. Leaves a very, very positive, I would say, it hits a nerve, but in a very positive way. People feel appreciated. They're more motivated. So absolutely, like I would recommend everybody doing that. Like whatever we did well, just have a round of a clap, right? Like just clap for everybody. Let's just clap for like 30 seconds. Let's acknowledge everything we did well. Yeah, that's great. That's great input.
Hi, my name is Iris.
Hi.
I work at Allscripts, and what we do is we have our retrospectives happening after every sprint, and our sprints are about 2 weeks. What we did to sort of spin it up a little bit, because we do follow the format of what went well, what didn't go well, and what could we do better. What we did was we created a dice where we would roll the dice, and the dice would have like obviously 6 options, and those 3 options in the columns were there. And then we had a high five, and we had a wild card, and we had a nominate another person because they don't know what to say yet. So
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we kind of did that just to spin up the normal retro.
Right.
But I was looking forward to hearing what you had to say with different ideas, and I'd forgotten about some of those things that you had mentioned. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I think that is a really fun way to do it. And, I would imagine like all the options that people could put in, like we have a really young, fun loving team. So I cannot even imagine what they would write in the rest of the remaining phases, but definitely a very good idea. Very good idea. Yeah. It brings a little bit of fun, right? Like we're still talking business, but yeah, let's loosen it a little bit and, let's have a little bit of fun and just take it lightly. Really awesome. Great. I'm really interested to see my team implement draw me a picture. I really want to do that because I can't, like, I'm okay in drawing, but I still make stick figures for people. So I really want to see what other people do. That would be interesting. Thank you, Iris. Thank you for sharing it with the group.
Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, like, if we do not have any ones, then yeah, you can wrap it up. Yeah.
So I was just asking if anyone has any other questions that they would like to ask Neha on retrospectives, or if they would like to jump in on how they do it, or if what the experience that they have had. Otherwise, we can wrap it up here. Okay, so doesn't look like.
You're on mute, Iris. Yes.
Sorry. I have a
Iris,
question about the 5 whys. Do you normally prepare the problem at the before the retrospective, come up with the problems maybe from previous retrospectives and then do a 5 whys, or do you do the normal retrospective and then extend to include the 5 whys after? Because I find my team, as much as we are involved in the retrospectives, I think we're only doing it because we're expected to do the retrospective. And so sometimes like we mentioned, we are human, and we have off days, and so sometimes I find it's hard to draw information or even feedback from the team members.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering, how could I incorporate the 5 whys? Because I'd really
Right.
like to do that.
No, definitely. Good question. As I mentioned, I was surprised myself to see this methodology being associated with, the retrospectives. I'm a big fan of the 5 why technique, definitely. How I can see, I haven't tried it myself in context to the retrospectives. Like I do it all the time when I do root cause analysis and such, incident management, I do that. But how I can see this working is either, we are coming into this retrospective meeting knowing exactly what the problem is and what we're going to talk about. So, we start like even before, like, hey, you know what, we had this issue, or, we had this big concern that we're going to regroup about and figure out what's happening there. So we start with the problem before. The second approach could be where we have the retrospective meeting, and we have this category which was like didn't go well, or the one in the red, right? Like let's stop doing, or like something that didn't go well. So from there, if we think that the statement there is actually not doing justice to the actual root cause, because believe me or not, like I can say, oh, our release was really bad, but is it like it doesn't really appropriately describe the whole situation, doesn't tell me what the root cause was, doesn't tell me what went wrong. So for these things, when they are when these all the action, let's say all the comments are categorized, and then we prioritize them, and we think, okay, these two need further discussion. These need to be deep down into better in a better way, because we don't have enough context, and we don't think we can just put a band-aid and forget about it and hope it's going to work. We really need to figure this out, and either that can extend into the retrospective extended session, or it could be like taken as an action from there and then taken in a separate meeting, maybe with a more focused group. Or like if it's like 15 people, we have certain teams where we have more than 15 to 20 people, right? If it's like I would say, like, let's say if the issue is with respect to requirements and that leading to a missed implementation, we can take this, get into the 5 why format only with the PMO team or with the required stakeholders. That way we can make it more focused. But that's another way I can see it working. So either we start with the problem, or we have the retrospective meeting, we identify the problem, and then we do the 5 why.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Iris. I think we're good.
Okay, if no one else has any questions, we can wrap it up here. Just a gentle reminder that our next VanQ is happening on September 24th. We have Alex presenting on running Selenium automated tests in Azure DevOps. We also, Optimus is also running a webinar series on September 9th, where we have Rizwan, who is the CEO at Cymax Group. And he'll be talking about the digital transformation journey of Cymax Group. So if anyone is interested, you can find more details on our website, which is optimusinfo.com. And that brings us to the end of our VanQ webinar today. Thanks everyone for joining in, and hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Thank
And
you.
big thank you to Neha as well for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Neha. That was a great presentation.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.